Welcome to a brand new episode of the Fitish podcast. Very fitting today's topic, and we're back at the Fitish office's very professional environment.
Yes, now we have to travel.
I'm not in my pajamas.
Yes.
I have on makeup.
Babe,
I've been doing
you look
meetings all
amazing
morning, very
on your
professional.
pajamas without makeup.
No, I look hideous. But I actually smell. It's a good thing you can't smell through the podcast. I smell like Mexican food right now because I really need to get this blazer dry cleaned because I did not have Mexican food today. I had Mexican food a few days ago, but I'm re-wearing the blazer. And you cannot be around fajitas.
I was like, what's that chimichanga smell?
No,
Like
you cannot be around fajitas or sizzling meat and then re-wear the same clothes again.
No.
But that's not what we're here to talk about today. This is
what are we here to talk about today?
the much anticipated, long-awaited business podcast.
I feel like this camera is like it's giving a crotch shot, you know?
Yeah, it does look like that. No, actually, we've changed the setup. If you don't watch us on YouTube, what better time than now? You can go to YouTube and watch the Fitish podcast, but we wanted to kind of change it up, look more professional. The mic flags still aren't in. Those are the ones that are going to have the Fitish logo
Coming
on them.
soon.
With a stand, so you don't even have to hold it. That just frees up. That's the problem.
What am I going to do with my hands?
I hopefully not be on your fucking phone. That's the problem, that I give you free hands and I don't know what you're going to do with them. At least right now you're saddled with holding the microphone. Yeah. But no, we're going to do a business podcast, but Francisco and I decided to break it up a little bit, and we're going to do mine first because we're in both such different types of businesses, right? Like Francisco does real estate. You've done so many things. You've lived 9 lives. I mean,
I feel that I do so many things.
You still do so many things. So, I mean, you could do a business podcast on like how to get out of a mugging when you're selling something in a bank. You could do a business podcast on a failed journey to priesthood. You could do a business podcast.
Well, that was a pro bono.
Like capitalizing on dating elderly women. You have so many options with what you could do as a business
I have
podcast.
some other talents besides the ones that you already mentioned.
Yeah. Dieting. Now you've lost 18 pounds. How about that?
18 pounds in 3 weeks.
You're going to have some time. And he's starving. He might eat the microphone. Anyway, we're going to hear from Fred, or really real estate in general, right? So you can ask Fran some questions on one coming up. But we just decided to keep it separate because our businesses are so different that I don't feel like there's just no way I could even advise you, or I just ask you questions about your business. I do not understand real estate and selling homes or vacation property, everything that you do. I could not deal with clients in the way that you do. We deal with clients in a different way with an e-commerce business. So today, my whole topic of conversation is going to be how to start and get your side hustle going. And a lot of the questions I get from our audience have to do with, a lot of us are moms and you have passions and you either work part-time or full-time. You're unhappy. You want to pivot. You want to start something else. So a couple of y'all sent in emails in the last few weeks. I'm actually going to get to those later on in today's show. But I actually built a presentation recently. I told you all about speaking at SMU. I wish it applied more to today than it does, but I feel like part of this is knowing your audience, which is actually part of my little lesson of today, because I think knowing your audience in any capacity is really important. And my audience here is different than it is when I go and speak to young girls on a college campus, kind of about, getting their first job and that whole career trajectory.
We're with a more experienced crowd.
We're like, you already get like part of that speech was, hey, you got to sometimes take a job that you hate to figure out what you don't want to do with your life. Because of course, that's a little bit of my story. Like I did a lot of things before I landed in radio. And then of course, I never could have envisioned ending up here running a business. Well, now 2 businesses.
Yeah.
3 businesses if you count the podcast. So it's not like really fully my business. I let other people run that show. I just get on here and talk and try and make decent content. But anyway, yeah. So, okay. So I'm just going to take it back to the beginning and say, how would this apply for a lot of you in your life? And so for me, where I was, so no matter what kind of job you have, let's say you're feeling somewhat unfulfilled. I've talked openly about that. I wanted a creative outlet, right? But I recognized like I needed to figure out what was missing, right? So if it's a product that you want to sell, or you want to, I got an email we'll address later about being a virtual assistant. You're obviously starting a business, right? Because you feel that there is something missing that you have to offer. And so for me, I think it's actually really important to just determine, what do you want to do? For myself, speaking from experience with Fitish, it actually is not, I didn't end up where I started with this, and I think that's okay. You know, originally I knew I wanted to do something in the fitness space, but I made those workout videos with a trainer just to make enough money to then have a product, because that can be more costly. And then I was scared. I was so scared that I was going to like order product and be sitting on it and not have an audience for it. And so I did those workout videos, and my original idea after making money was I was thinking about doing super strength makeup. I don't know if I've ever said this, that like didn't come off when you sweat. So it would almost be like performance makeup.
That's incredible, because
quality,
you know, that's a great idea. You see so many women in the gym that wear makeup, and I always used to criticize them, but then I understood that they're coming at lunch, or they'll have to be ready to go anywhere after, which they don't shower. I don't know about that, But
see, you're going where my head was at. So I really took some time. I don't think you have to have this like brilliant idea overnight. And I'm really glad that I sat on that and flushed it out. So, you know, I think it's just important to think about what products or services are missing from the market that would be valuable to you. And I would just start by observing kind of what's missing in your life. What do you need? You're a mom and you're like, oh man, I wish this was combined with this, and that sort of thing. So when I tell you it took me over 2 years to figure out that I wanted to do this post-workout spray, it's because I would just constantly observe in the environment that I was in what I felt was missing. And I think that the takeaway with that is like a crowded space doesn't mean that you shouldn't be there. That actually means that there's more market share. I think a lot of people shy away from doing things, and it's like, oh my God, there's so many waters. Well, look at what Liquid Death did. Liquid Death has become almost $1 billion company. Well, granted, I've heard that they're struggling with cash flow because they're like massive and don't know how to keep up with business. But the whole point is it's canned water, and you're like, how water's such a crowded industry. But look at, of course, what we're going to get to is kind of the marketing of that. But I just think that the takeaway with this is, of course, just find out what's missing in the market. That would be my biggest step one, because a lot of you go, I want to do something, but I don't even know what to do. Well, what are you passionate about? Evaluate your life for a while. Think about it every day. You got to like sit in it. You know what I mean? You got to sit in your situation.
And it's either what's missing or what could be more practical, what could be easier to get, what could have more varieties. Like all these water tumbler things. What's the Stanley one, the Yeti one? Like there's the sun.
You know what's crazy that you bring that up? So a lot of y'all are familiar with those tumblers. I'm not a tumbler girl, which I know makes me kind of an anomaly, because I think almost every woman's a tumbler woman. Maybe I would be if I tried one. I don't own a Stanley. I've never tried it. But there is another brand out there, and I don't recall the name.
The one with the colors. There was the sales in Amazon that it's killing it.
When I tell you that their sales would shock you, I know who does their ad buying. They're at like $80 million a year in sales. Okay, so let's talk about why. I mean, this is what's hard. You want to talk about numbers like that, but I mean, I'm not there as a business, and it's hard, and not everyone gets there.
But it's very interesting.
They've undercut the pricing of the Stanley, and they have great retail distribution and Target and all of that. And you're right, they match people's outfits. So it's like, here's one with daisies, here's one, and
cheaper.
Yep,
it's
cheaper,
but not cheap. It's cheaper. Like a Stanley's like $60. This one is just like $30.
Right.
But they have immediate access to every color, every pattern. So they have these varieties. So they created something where the space was really crowded, made it better, and made a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah, it's just making something. The thing is about a crowded market that I've learned in business is like that means there's market share. That means there's demand for it. So if you can differentiate yourself, now a lot goes into that, right? And so, talking about a product like that, I mean, yeah, that might be too late for that space in a way, because there's a lot of that already, and it can be really expensive to make cups like that. I mean, we've looked into just for fun making cups like that, and it's just very costly sometimes. So anyway, knowing your audience, and I think that's what's part of that is, right? They knew that they could tap into an audience that wanted cups like that. And so I was actually asking Danny before we did the show today, what would interest you if you were listening to a podcast about starting a business? And she goes, well, I would want to hear about the marketing of something, and I would want to hear about how you knew who to market to. And I think that's what's important, because like, let's say you're a you're a teacher and you've noticed something missing in the market. Well, you already know somewhat who your audience might be, right? Or when you post on social media, if you're a mom, it's like, don't do what you don't know, because that's going to make it really difficult for you. Like if I were to come out with like an erectile dysfunction drug, like I know nothing about the penis and erections.
You know,
Fran, on the other hand, like it would make more sense, you know, to be a more male-dominated industry. That'd be really hard for me. No, just the point is knowing your audience. Like I knew who my audience was based off of a radio show and kind of who some of y'all were that were listening and what you might be interested in and what kind of price point you would be interested in. And so I really took that into consideration when it came time to do a business, knowing who my audience was. Same just with my social channel in general, especially with, you know, another business venture that we just have now. It's just really important to know who your audience is. Now, I always like to tell people, I don't know what to do. And like I referenced the Spanx story. I don't have any money, or I only have a little bit of money. And then you hear these stories from like Sarah Blakely, who I love, who founded Spanx. She's like, I literally like had $5,000 in my savings account and like went all in on starting this brand. Yeah, that's amazing that it turned out to be what it is for her today. I mean, she's just such a cool founder story, but that's so not reality. I just think there's such a misconception about going all in. And I think as we get, as a woman who has a family and needs to make money and needs health insurance, I think it's so, that's so great that that works for some people and that they're willing to like gamble it all on an idea. But I just don't agree with that mentality. I don't think that it's sustainable. And I don't think that a lot of us in general can stomach that sort of thing. And so that's why I kept a paying job for almost 3.5 years while I had a growing business, just to ensure that it was okay. And so I just think there's a big misconception around going all in. I don't think you need to go all in on something. I think you can dip your toe in the water. I think you can start figuring out
100%.
Who is your audience? What do you want to do? What kind of money do you have to put into this? You know, you can start really small. You can start figuring that out along the way and
see if there's strategic partners that could help the growth without sacrificing the integrity of your business.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of my next things to talk about. And it's putting yourself in a position to learn and to succeed. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't consider, because we drown in our day-to-day of the job that we're in, and you're around your family, and it's really hard to find any extra time to give to yourself, to a hobby, to a passion, to anything. But I always say we all make time for the things we want to do. And I didn't find real success in my business until I started eliminating distraction and noise and surrounding myself with people that were supportive. I've talked very openly about how there were many people close in my life from my former job or just in general with certain friends or family that felt very discouraging about me kind of trying to start a new business venture. And I would listen to a lot of podcasts, granted, people I didn't know, but I would also kind of surround myself with older mentors if they had a chance to, you know, go to the driving range or go grab a drink. And I would ask them a lot of questions about their business experience and about and like kind of bounce my ideas off of them, because these people were more objective and they didn't have anything to lose or gain from my success or failure or any kind of like personal, you know, there was just no personal investment in a way, right? Because I think with friends, I always say, and I said this to college kids too, I was like, you're going to learn real quick who your friends are when you start a business, right? Because sure, everyone may be like, rah, rah, that sounds great. But then you start doing really good, you're not going to have those same friends, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, you know, they'll be negative or this jealous side will come out. And that's not for everyone, you know, but it's very true. And it's such a shame to say that. But yeah, there is a saying that actually says, do you want to know who your true friends are? Start a business and then see how that goes. Because they may be supportive in the beginning, or a lot of times they're negative. And I think, I don't know, that can come from a place of
I hate the ones that don't let you slave them for free, you know?
Work for free?
Yeah. Those are non-supportive friends.
I use friends and family as like testers, right? Like Francisco, you're a guinea pig for product. And I think that you give pretty honest feedback, and I don't always agree with it, or I don't always say, like when I changed a bottle, for instance, and you were like, no, I liked the other one more. And I'm like, too fucking bad, like that one. But you didn't understand that bottle got dirty from makeup hands because it was a soft touch bottle and it was white. Yeah. But like if a girl's washing her face, our bottles originally were soft touch instead of what they are now. And it was funny. So I didn't listen to your advice on that.
And I will suggest to that woman to wash her hands before she washes her face, but 100%.
But it doesn't make sense because you're touching your face with makeup with your hands, and then you're closing the bottle.
Now I get it.
And so it was getting the bottle really dirty. But again, you're a man. What do you know about makeup?
Thankfully, nothing.
But
anyway. Obviously, like you might like, well, when I put my concealer on, I normally wash my hands after.
Look, starting a business can be really lonely. And I think that, you know, unfortunately, friends and family can be a great support system. It can also take away from the business. So you have to find the time, even if it's just a couple hours a week, to tune into a podcast, to read a book, to better yourself, right? It's also the 10,000 hour rule. Like, you're only going to get out what you put into something. And if you're just not putting the effort in, like I used to have this conversation with someone all the time, and they would go, I really want to start this business, but I don't have the time. You don't get it, Jenna. You have a family, or you don't have a family yet, and you just don't have the time. But I still, even now being a mom, and I do have more perspective, yes, it's very hard to find the time, but we all make time for the things we want to do. It's just like dieting or exercising.
But mainly it's just like that. Exactly like dieting, exercising. Entrepreneurship is something that where fear will paralyze you. And fear, it's going to be your worst enemy. And I understand that you have responsibilities, and there's a family, and there are bills, there's mortgage. But if you have something, if you have an idea, there's so much data right now, like abundance of data. You can see how other people are doing with that same brand or with that in that same area. You can see stats. You can see which day sells better, which year, like everything. Like, there's nothing you cannot see. So just do your research and exchange that fear with savviness, exchange that fear with research.
Well, let's be tangible about it. So at night, you're going to watch your favorite television show with your partner, right? You may have an hour at night. And if you say, Jenna, I don't even have a spare hour in the day, then okay, then you shouldn't start a business. But if you're like, I know that we all fuck around sometimes with free time. And my free time is more limited than it used to be, but I still find the time, and it's harder to carve out, but to better myself even now that I have a business. So that hour, even if it's just a couple hours a week, instead of watching a show, I know you want to watch a show, but what do you want more? You know, I would find a podcast to listen to, or I would find a lunch hour in your work week or time to ask a mentor or someone you look up to go out for a coffee, or to just have a virtual coffee date. Hey, can I just ask you a few questions? I still do that for people, or I ask people to do that if I want to learn from them. But that's the only way you're going to better yourself, is by carving out the time. Yeah, that may mean you're sacrificing your exercise hour to go hang out with someone and learn, but this is all about prioritizing what's important to you, right? So just the takeaway from this in general for me is just be careful who you surround yourself with at this period of time that you're trying to start a business, and really capitalize on those down hours where an hour might be spent on TikTok, but unless it's for research, instead of that hour, try and learn. And Fran is so right about the resources that are available, like AI and things of that nature. I mean, you could get an AI and you could do full...
Ask anything, and they have a lot of data also, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to take a quick break and hear from some of our Fitish podcast sponsors. And then we will be back, and I'm going to talk about how much money, if any, do you need to raise, and some other key takeaways that I recommend in starting a business. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and BetterHelp is necessary when you are starting a new business venture, because I've needed a lot of therapy in trying to deal with being an entrepreneur. It can be so difficult to know if you're making the right decision. And I mean, there are just constantly days where I feel kind of in doubt about my abilities. And therapy is just so wonderful for so many different seasons of your life. They can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. behind. And I know both Francisco and I have benefited from couples therapy personally as well. And I think it's just really critical, especially when it comes to relationships, to learn how to argue better and better coping skills in general. And parenting, of course, has thrown a huge curveball into our life. And we're very open about that. And again, that's just why BetterHelp is so great. And you say, Jenna, I don't have the time to go to in-person therapy. You don't need the time. You literally can sit at your office, schedule a session, and you have someone right there on your computer, and you don't even have to turn your camera on if you don't feel like it. But if you're thinking of starting therapy, you really should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Fitish today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's betterhelp.com/Fitish for 10% off your first month. It is so fun watching my child grow, developmentally especially, right? But it can also make me question if I'm doing all the right things for him. Now he's 15 months? And I hate to be that parent that's like, he's 15 months old, but it's so important. And KiwiCo knows the importance of the age of your child and where they should be at developmentally and what will stimulate them and encourage them to grow. I've loved our KiwiCo subscription. They are defining the future of play by making it engaging, enriching, and seriously fun. Remy's getting his panda crate filled with totally age appropriate things for him to play with, right? So, from the time he was just a few months old and we got our first panda crate box, and it was all full of, textures and sensory activities and black and white cards, because I guess that's all they can really see at that age, right? And I didn't know that. And how would you know that, especially as a first-time parent? You're going to be so surprised at the quality of the projects that you're going to get as well, because, you go to the toy store, you want to order stuff online, right? You're going to end up spending $20, $30, $40 to get one item. And for the same cost, you're going to get a box of anywhere between 5 and 8 items in this crate. And it's just so much fun and so high quality. And the cool part is they have stuff for all age ranges. So even if you have an adolescent or a teenager, they're going to have, age appropriate and also, whatever they're interested in, right? Are they interested in science or engineering? And it's just so much fun. Redefine learning with play. Explore hands-on projects that build creative competence and problem-solving skills with KiwiCo. Get 50% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line at kiwico.com/Fitish. That's 50% off your first month at kiwico.com/Fitish. So the other day, I opened up a box in the mail, and I was very confused because it looked like dryer sheets, but it is so much better than dryer sheets. Earth Breeze looks just like dryer sheets, but it's detergent in sheet form. And they do it this way because it's totally sustainable. It's so cool. Why are we using these pods in giant plastic jugs that they say end up in landfills and oceans, just completely contaminating and harming our planet and marine life? And Earth Breeze went, there has to be a better way. And we can't just stop washing our clothes, especially as parents. You know how many loads of laundry we're doing now. And this Earth Breeze laundry detergent, they're eco sheets that look like dryer sheets, but they're not. It's a revolutionary liquidless laundry detergent that dissolves 100% in any wash cycle, hot or cold. No measuring, no mess, no heavy plastic wasteful jugs. Just toss the sheet in. They've made the whole concept of detergent better. I absolutely love this. It's so cool to just throw a sheet in and know it's going to completely dissolve and wash your clothes perfectly. And they offer flexible subscriptions as well, so you can adjust it, pause it, or cancel it at any time with no contracts or fees. Francisco and I have loved doing laundry with these. It's so easy. Also, let's just talk about alleviating the mess in general, whether you do liquid or pods. Think about how sometimes the pods just don't open up, and you open a load of laundry and you're like, what happened? Why is this pod just sitting here leaking? Or, oh my gosh, the capfuls of detergent all over the place that I'm always cleaning up. No, this is completely alleviated with these sheets of detergent. Don't take my word for it. You can try it for yourself with their risk-free 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like it, Earth Breeze will give you a full refund, no questions asked, and no return necessary. Switch from the old-fashioned goo to something new. Right now, our listeners can subscribe to Earth Breeze and save 40% off. Go to earthbreeze.com/Fitish to get started. That's earthbreeze.com/Fitish earthbreeze.com/Fitish for 40% off. earthbreeze.com/Fitish. All right, we're back with our business edition of the Fitish podcast. We are talking today about how to start and get your side hustle going. And I've kind of tried to lead you along the way of getting something jump started and some tips that I have. And now I want to get into a little more of the details about it, if that interests you. But I am always talking to people that are like, I'm trying to raise money. Because once you become a founder, then other founders want to like get together and talk about stuff. And so I've never been like a good founder on founder person.
Like a support group.
Not really, because founder on founder meetings tend to be like, what can I do for you and what can you do for me? That's kind of nice sometimes, but it's also the number one kind of conversation that comes up is they're trying to raise money. And I think that raising money is a whole different thing. Raising money from friends and family is usually the recommendation from the beginning. If you do have a great idea and there's some data behind it, and maybe you're lucky enough. I just, being honest, like I hate asking people for money, and I didn't have really anyone that close to me that I could ask for a ton of money at really any juncture in this business. You know, I got like a couple of loans that then I paid back. But in general, it could be a very scary thing to ask for money. So I like to tell people, yes, you have to have a little bit of money to start a business, depending on what your idea is. You know, if you're virtually offering a product that you don't even have to pay to make, maybe it's something you're digitally creating, you don't need as much money. That's just time. I mean, time is money. But I think raising too much money is a fail. And this is why. What are you going to do with it? You know, you're going to raise money. Let's say you want to raise, $200,000 or something like that from friends and family. Well, you're going to have to give them a big piece of the company, unless you have a rich family member that wants to give you a loan that you're going to pay back with like really high interest, right? But that's great if you have that resource and you want to go out on a limb. But I think raising too much money is a fail. I still am too scared. And now I'm in a juncture of recognizing we probably need to raise money as a business. But I'm still scared to do that because it's a lot of money is a lot more responsibility, and you have to figure out what to do with it. And then you have to take risk. And then, okay, are you going to buy advertising on television? Are you going to hire a bunch of people?
No, you have to have a plan where you're going to spend it exactly every dime of it. I am with you. I think raising too much money, if you don't know where to put it, can absolutely crush you because you will misplace funds. But I also think it's vital for you to raise money because you will be held accountable. Like if you have someone else's money and you have the pressure that you have to pay that back, that you or they're your partners, you have to perform. It's not only you; you're held accountable with someone else. That your business has to work.
Yeah.
So you're never like just laying in your laurels when you make your first 10 sales.
I don't 100% agree, but for me, I can only kind of speak to my own experience of, I had a loan, so I did have to pay back money monthly with a pretty high interest rate. So obviously I was motivated to earn to pay it back, but I get really intimidated and kind of overwhelmed if I owe someone a lot of money. So I just always looked at it as, truthfully, everyone's motivation is different. My motivation wasn't as much that as it was, I was so motivated to have my own business so I could leave a job that I was no longer happy with, that's what the focus was. So for me, it was more an incremental day by day. And I think it's more manageable that way too, because every day I would say, remember, I had another job, so I was not taking any money from the business. So even on the days that the business, I would sell like 2 products, it was okay because I had a salary. And that's why I say it's so important to not expect that in the first couple of years of your business that you're going to be able to live off of that income, So if you can make a little bit of money as a side hobby, that's what you should do. And then if you're not taking money from the business, you're able to put all of that revenue and all of those profits back into the business to kind of incrementally grow. And it took me, again, like I said, 3.5 years of making profit, which obviously in the beginning, profit isn't even really profit because you're in debt. But it took me that long to feel comfortable enough leaving a job. I'll never forget still my dad who, he was concerned. He was like, how much money do you have saved? I was like, Dad, I don't know, what do they recommend? Like 6 months or something like that. And I just hit a different level of comfort. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I have enough money saved, but like that'll go. I mean, if I was making zero money, 6 months isn't that long. And he was just like, you really think like, he was so worried about me leaving my job on the radio since it was so steady.
Well, he was just worried to go for you to become part of the payroll again.
Yeah. No, that was never going to happen. So yeah, anyway, I just think that you don't need to concern yourself with like having too much money to start, depending on what your idea is. I mean, if you're like, I want to do the next like Peloton bike. Well, yeah, you probably need like a ton of capital to create something like that.
I want to do the next SpaceX.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I can't give you any advice on that. I think that's like more of a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk question, but yeah, that's for another day. So Danny, my marketing director, I said, what do you think is the biggest takeaway before I started this podcast today? I go, for you, what would the biggest takeaway be about starting your own kind of e-commerce business or side hustle? And of course, what does she say? Marketing. She's so right though. I mean, at the end of the day, Fitish, you may say, oh, it's a CBD skincare company. I say we specialize in marketing because we know who the audience is, we have a product, and we market that product. And so everything we do and every bit of revenue that we get, I believe, comes from our creative marketing.
Absolutely. I think it's part of the product, but you know how to target, you know how to sell that product.
Yeah, so I said,
it's quality
and
product.
I said, so Danny and I were talking about this, and I said, if you were to give advice as my marketing director to a woman or someone trying to start a new business, she was like, you got to figure out who to market to. And I was like, you're so right. And we already kind of addressed that. But I think that we use a service. I don't know if it's getting too nitty gritty, but like we use a service called Klaviyo for our email marketing. There's a couple of other options like that out there. And we've been very happy with Klaviyo. And yes, you have to pay for it depending on how many email addresses. But this is where is your product going to work? Email marketing is everything. Y'all get our Fitish emails probably. But email marketing, no matter what your business is, it's so nice to keep a customer kind of entertained by your content. And you can this is a way for you to like communicate with them. They're going to look at you every single day, whether they're buying product from you. You aren't buying something from me every single day, but by reaching out to you and filling you in on something funny or interesting, it's a way to connect with your customer. And I just will live and die by the sentiment that email marketing and marketing in general is kind of like the end all be all when it comes to business and business in general. I just think it's absolutely so important. So what's the takeaway for you on that? An email list. It's data. The email list is everything. Friends, family, figure out who you're marketing to, depending on what your business model is and where you live. But how can you get more people signed up to hear what you have to say or to see what you have to sell? And I just think by collecting email addresses, it's just the best route to that, because then you can kind of figure out how many people are on that first email list. And we put a lot of effort into our email marketing.
Especially that with these tools, you can see how many people open it, how many people stay on it, how many people click on it. Yes.
Yeah, where you live, what time you do it. No, we don't get, you can get that nitty gritty on it. You can text people as well. But no, I just think it's really nice because you want to remain top of mind, and everyone's distracted. It can be really hard. And so you can't be everywhere all at once. And yeah, you may go to a farmer's market to sell your product, but collect email addresses. It's everything.
Yeah, make it a point. Like you do it very creatively, like make giveaways where if you put your email and you invite 5 people, like be creative of the way that you captive your audience.
I've told Fran that recently about doing even more newsletters than you do, because I think it's so interesting that way you are, someone doesn't buy a house every day, but when they do, you want them to be like, oh, wow, I read his newsletters about, what's going on in the market and about second homes and vacation homes. And you may only get one purchase out of that person ever in their life, but that's a way to stay top of mind to people.
Yeah, no, and I for sure, that's something that you keep telling me over and over, and I need to start. But it's going back to the email. It's really interesting to see how and when people open an email, because you send an announcement, like a new listing or a price reduction, and you sent one a month ago, and you still see people that are opening it today. Like there's people that are catching up to their emails that they don't know.
So there's a lot of, I could do a whole show on just marketing and email marketing probably if that was interesting. But that gets into a lot of specifics, but it is fascinating. And you say that. So for instance, with Superfuture, the new business, we knew that was just going to be email generation. And You know, and we obviously Fitish is a completely different email list. And so we just solicited for email addresses, or I did, you know, on my social media, and we had about 1,000 of you sign up. Now, when we sent out that first email, only 50% opened it. And so, you know, usually what I would do is say, oh, we can send out another email, you know, because what you can do is you can actually send another email with a different headline in the same copy. And a lot of times that test email too will work better. But I mean, even a 50% open rate, by the way, is like really, really strong. And now we've actually had like an 87% open rate, but you know, only a quarter of those people made purchases. And that's it, but they didn't know what they were signing up for either, right? Like a lot of people didn't know it was going to be like a full like cannabis brand. So people didn't know what they were signing up for. But regardless, I like to think maybe you're on the fence, but if we have a flow that's educating you on what we're selling, that yes, it's this, but it's also this, and it's this. Oh, here's a refer a friend. You get $5 off if they make a purchase or leave a review and that sort of thing. Anyway, you get it. Having people on email, I just couldn't like put more attention on that. I think it's super important, and it's going to be your first and most loyal customers. I mean, still to this day, y'all, those of you that are signed up for our Fitish email, man, our Fitish emails do so well. Of course, when we're like giving you 20% off or something, but just in general, the open rate on those emails is great. So I think this obviously leads into a lot of people are going to go, I have no idea how to create an email and to create good creative content. And so that's where I would say, you know, Canva is such a great resource. These kids that started that business Canva are just so amazing because it is just such, it's so.
Everybody's like
a designer.
A designer, yes.
Well, now you can use, I mean, AI to create anything. But yes, I will say, you know, my next part of this was, okay, well, where do you spend money if you do have a little bit of money and make a little bit of money? And I would say it's number one is hiring the person to do the things that you suck at. And for me, you know, that became someone to manage the cash, someone to manage the money, because math is just far from my specialty, but that is obviously something super important about running a business. Yeah. So for me, that was kind of the first contract hire that I did, was hiring someone to help me manage the books and the money. And then obviously having a real right hand to help me with creative content. So, you know, that's one of those things though, that these days,
that's an excellent advice for sure. Having someone that does what you don't know best and help you understand it.
I remember a few years ago when I was kind of in my first year of business, I was at a really cool conference and I was listening to a guy talk, and he was one of the founders of RX Bar. And I've told this story before. And he and his friends started that RX Bar in one of their parents' basements in Chicago, Illinois. And of course, they went through like a lot of rebranding. They ended up selling that company for like over $300 million to like Procter and Gamble or General Mills or something. But they said in the beginning, you know, obviously it was just a shit show. Like they're trying to make a food item, they're trying to brand it, package it. They figured out who their audience was, which was CrossFitters, interestingly. And they weren't CrossFitters, but they figured out that CrossFitters really wanted that kind of like low carb, clean, energy, protein. And so they started hitting up like every CrossFitting tournament or competition in the country. And that was really something that kind of set them off. And so there, you can go listen to this guy speak about it. He actually did a really great podcast on how I built this, which is that Guy Raz NPR podcast. And I highly recommend listening to any of those that interest you, because a lot of the founders talk about how they started and how they failed and things like that. But I asked him when I got a chance to talk to him at this conference, because it was very intimate. And I was like, you know, what do I, you know, when you're making a little bit of money, but you don't know like what the next steps are, he's like, you got to hire the people to do the things that you suck at. Then it opens you up to continue doing the things and doing more of the things that you're good at, that you like to do. And so I thought I was like, yeah, that's really great, because you know, you have to at some point learn how to scale, and by like not having to do, I mean, you should have seen me trying to do like invoices and stuff like that. It was just such a shit show.
Was that, which year did you started this whole thing?
I started Fitish in, technically, I think it was like 2017. I started like the website and the branding, and it started as kind of a lifestyle site while I was really like sitting on that idea of like what I wanted to do. So I did that and started kind of posting those short version workouts.
Yeah.
Like very digestible kind of content, a little bit of travel content, everything kind of around that Fitish lifestyle. And then we're about to, I think, hit the 5-year mark. So it was in like August of 2018. So it took me from April of 2017 to August of 2018 to launch a product.
I remember when I first met you in December that you were so excited because you sold out for the first time. You sold out of Tone Down.
I did 1,000 of the same bottle, but 2 different products, and we sold out. Then we didn't have anything until right before Christmas, but it felt promising, even though I was sold out of product and no one could buy anything.
It was so exciting to see the progress because it was a milestone after a milestone after a milestone. It was very exciting, and during that time, what do you think it was the most difficult part of growing the business?
In the very, very beginning,
when you started having
so
product.
Funny when I think about like back then what I was stressed about compared to now, because I would love to say it gets easier, but I think it gets like there's so much more at stake. It gets so much harder to grow. But back then the growing pains were simply like I had to wait forever. I mean, it took me almost 3 years, y'all, to have a full month. I'm sorry, 2020. End of 2020 was the first time I had a full month where I had every product fully stocked for the whole month. There's something great about being sold out. There's more demand for it, but then you're also not making any money when you're sold out for like months at a time of a product people like. So yeah, I would say in the beginning it was just for me, the hardest part, honestly, was how tired I was because I was still working a job and putting a lot of effort into this. I could have never, it would have been really hard for me to do what I did today, you know? Like that constant. I mean, I was just almost
especially
20 hours a day. I felt like I was working. Yeah. So it'd be slower growth for me at this point for sure. But yeah, that was hard. I think I just couldn't really believe the reception of it. I was excited. I felt that there was some promise there. So I actually wasn't as scared in the beginning. I was like, because there was no expectation. You understand? Like in the beginning, I had very low expectations. This was simply a branding thing for me. Like I wanted a creative outlet. And that's what I want to add to a lot of people that's super important. A big mistake that I see a lot of women make, people in general, when they start business, is you rush to it because you're so excited about your idea that you just want to get it out there. And I think like the hardest part about it is being really patient, really locked down, really polishing your idea, really spending the time and the attention on the branding, because it can be so easy to just like get a friend to do a logo for $100 and slap it on there. No, like don't do that, because if you're entering into a space where there's a lot of competition, branding is going to set you apart from everything. Like find someone to consult with if you don't have a ton of money, but you got to pay someone to do good branding for you, because that's everything. Why are you going to buy this and not that? You know, and I tell this story about when I first created these products. I went into a laboratory here in North Texas, and they literally, okay, what do you want to make? What do you like the look of? And I already kind of had an idea going in, but they put 2 products in front of me. One was like tinted. It looked like a big like body wash bottle or shampoo bottle, and it had like a sticker around it, and it had a bunch of like leaves and butterflies, and it was just like really blah. And the other thing was like a Tom Ford without Tom Ford on it, but it was like a Tom Ford like beauty palette. And they were like, these are like the exact same like ingredients. Basically it was like that kind of vibe, like same ingredients, but like look at the different packaging. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about this industry in particular, that like so much of the stuff, hey, even some of my stuff, a lot of it, there is similar brands on the market, there's similar ingredient decks. Why are you going to buy one thing over another thing? Because you like the look of it, right? Because both are great. That's what the point is. They weren't like, one wasn't shitty, but one is literally 3 times the cost of the other one, and the other one just has shitty branding and it's like on the back of the shelf at a Whole Foods,
and it's exactly the same thing.
And it's exactly the same thing. So that's where I think branding is everything.
So I have had many people telling me, and of course these people are not wine enthusiasts, but that they buy a bottle of wine because of the label. Like, oh my God, I love the label, I'm gonna buy it. Like, it's just
think, like,
something.
Prisoner is a good example of that. Like, people hear Prisoner, it gets picked up at restaurants, it has this weird label, it has this cool name, and you're like, I want a red blend, and people are like, Prisoner, and like the wine's fine. I mean, it's good, but like,
but it's that thing.
It's just that thing.
When you are in the grocery store and you have hundreds of bottles to choose for, and you have 5 seconds and you don't know any of them, you're gonna pick the one that looks at least more appealing. And that maybe not, wine is not the best example, but there's many other things that are like that.
And the name's important, and it goes back to Sarah Blakely with Spanx telling that story. She knew from her study of like words being put together that a k sound resonated with people, and I just find that whole thing, and that may bore some people, but I find, and same with like the F sound, which is a reason I wanted like an F word is a very strong sounding name. You don't forget it as much, you know, but she kind of referenced like, you know, you go back to like Nike and you go back to some of these words. Granted, Nike has more meaning, obviously, with like Greek mythology and stuff, but like you go back to certain words that are short and have a harsh sound to them, and they perform really well because of that. And so she always said Spanx, like spanking, like that Spanx sounded just like what she wanted, and it had like that sound to her that she thought really stuck out. And I don't know, I love naming and branding. I think it's everything.
But that is something about marketing that is really interesting. The psychology behind colors, the psychology behind the waves, like where it hits you in your brain, the sounds, the smells, like everything, like an Abercrombie and Fitch store, like everything has to be orchestrated.
Oh my God. Isn't that funny you said that? I haven't thought about Abercrombie in so long, and now you said that and I smell it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was intentional.
100 everything.
I don't want to smell it again. That makes me think of like every guy I knew in high school, right? The Abercrombie cologne. Are you wearing that today?
No.
Is Abercrombie still open?
Yes, there's one in the mall. They keep pushing it. You know, like in the 90s, it was like right next to Armani and Gucci. And right now it's like in the back of the mall. And the only reason I know this is because now I go to the mall very often with my boy.
That's true. You do. Our boy who's walking now, finally. Okay. So this is where I want to leave you before we get to two of y'all wrote in some great questions, but I said just start doing, because I think the hardest part is the fear. And so, you know, I just always like to kind of leave everyone with like, you don't have to have it all figured out from the jump. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't even have to be paying someone to do the branding yet. Why don't you start figuring out what your hobby is and start putting the content out there? There's so many free ways to put out what you're interested in. I don't care if it's like making pottery and you want to sell it at the farmer's market, or you want to post videos of yourself doing it. You're going to start to figure out who your audience is and if people are interested in what you have going on. So I just say, just start doing with little bitty steps, and we'll see where you get from there. But we got a couple of questions that I thought would be fun for us to address. The first one, I don't know if you want me to read your name or not, so I'll leave it off just in case. But you said, hey, Jen, I'm so excited you're doing this podcast. I'm a teacher, but I'm burnt out, and I want to start something I can build that will allow me to eventually leave education. And I know this is so true with a lot of teachers, which is such a shame, because y'all do not get paid enough, and you have like way too much responsibility around there. But my new venture is zero prep, ready to heat and eat meals made from scratch with local organic ingredients sourced from local farmers and other small businesses. It's an untapped market where we live in Michigan. I'm actually originally from Texas, but we're in a small town, but not too small that this idea wouldn't take off. And I want to support all these other small businesses. I know this idea will work. There's nothing like it here, but my business requires refrigeration. I can't do it from my home, but I can rent space at the local farmers market to prepare and store products. So I feel that it's a total win, but where I'm stuck is how to get started. What are the very first steps to take to get this thing off the ground, and the overall idea of how to get my business out there and seen? And so I think this is where it kind of goes back to knowing who your audience is, right? Do you have customers? You cannot start a fresh food business and not know who your customer base is. First, my recommendation, and I do not know a food business as well as other people, because I just think a food business is a whole different beast, because you're going to have product that gets like tossed out. It could be so difficult. And I know so many people want to do catering and do these kinds of things. And I like your idea. I like it. The refrigeration is the curveball, but you seem to have that figured out. So I would just say you got to figure out who your customers are. Are they just at the farmer's market? And then how are you going to get product to them? Because I look at this as going, well, I don't know what kind of food you want to make and how much time you have to do it, but this is all organic, right? So you're going to be appealing to a crowd that their price point might be different here. Are they fitness people? You know, are they working out? Do you want to maybe do pop-ups at different gym studios and have sampling? I would also start with like one thing, like one recipe, and kind of figure out what that looks like. Because you got to keep in mind something that I think a lot of people don't remember is like the transportation, the delivery, the packaging of it. Like you got to order stuff to put it in. And sometimes you got to do it a little more cheaply than what you want aesthetically, just because that's all you can afford. So I would just say, number one, get that email list going and figure out where your customer is and who that customer is. And then let that dictate your branding, right? You figure out your customer and who they are and their age range, and then that'll kind of help you with your branding. But I mean, gosh, there's a lot more than step one to getting an idea like that off the ground.
100%.
But yeah, I think I would just start to figure out who is going to buy it, who's going to buy this, and then go from there, right? And start getting a list of their names. And then pop-ups are fun. You know, pop-ups are such a great way to figure out who your audience is and if they're interested at all in what you're selling.
Like,
I wish I could help you
focus
more than
groups.
that, but
I think that, no, 100%. Like,
love
have your
focus
friends.
groups.
Like,
Yeah.
you have to have a quantitative analysis and a qualitative.
sometimes I feel like your friends aren't your best customers though. And I think that's what's hard is I actually prefer strangers because I think you get more honest, unbiased feedback from strangers. I love it. I hate it. I wish you were here. I wish you were doing this. Like we get such
And
great
get their
from
feedback. Yeah,
customers.
100%.
Okay, one more question before we go. Hi, Jenna and Fran. I started a virtual assistant business as a side hustle in November of 22. By January of 23, I had a fully booked client roster. However, recently I had 2 clients not renew contracts with me. One went with someone in-house full-time and only hired me because their business partner did and they weren't ready for a virtual assistant. Deep down, I know there are reasons that are beyond my control, but it's really hard not to feel a little bit of failure. What are some tips you have to keep going when business takes a dip? How do you separate that from feelings of personal failure? And they are, she's a parent to a little girl a month younger than Remy, and they love listening to the podcast. Her and her husband. That's a really awesome message. Thank you. I think this is what's hard. I actually still struggle with that. And there are definitely days all the time, by the way, from managing people and feeling like a failure and how I'm managing. I mean, just the stomach ride of entrepreneurship, I think is the hardest thing you can't prepare people for. And I listened to someone the other day. So these are not my words, but it keeps resonating with me. And they're like, the number one thing as an entrepreneur that you have to learn is mastering the middle. And mastering the middle means not the highs and the lows of starting a business, but the middle, the stuff where things don't go your way or you're trying to scale and it's not working. And I mean, even for me, like our sales dipped a little bit after COVID. Like we did really well in 2020 and then things are still going good, but it's like now there's new challenges. How do you get new customers? How do you scale? You lose retailers, you lose opportunities, and you feel like a personal failure. But the only advice I can give you is seasons change just like with everything else. And if you can ride it out and focus your energy instead on woe is me, maybe learn from it. That wasn't the right kind of client for you to have. How can you find a different kind of client? How can you market your services differently to retain those clients, right? So for me, I always try and look at it as the rejection and failure is an opportunity to pivot. It's easier said than done sometimes, but I mean, that's kind of my quickest.
There's 2 things. So she mentioned that by beginning or end of last year, beginning of this year, she had a full roster.
Yep.
Which that seemed that she kept her business. Like, I think, and this is my advice, what you need to find is outsource that service, brand it as yours, and get a bigger
How do you
roster.
outsource a virtual assistant business?
You go to India. You call, there's Indian companies that are doing it perfectly. Go overseas.
Okay. I have no idea how to do that, but I'm just thinking more tangibly like, first of all, you shouldn't have someone that by January 23 is allowed to cancel when they were full in November. So anyone I work with from PR to advertising, all of these other contractors, they have a 60-day out. So just to protect yourself, and this gets into nitty gritty, as a business owner, it sucks for me, right? Because here I am still having to spend $5,000 a month on a service that I want to cancel in 60 days. But I'm doing it because that's the contract. And that also protects them. So, that buys them some time to find hopefully other people to cover that cost. So anyway, we all got to look out for ourselves, but you got to look out for your business. And when you're doing a contract work as a virtual assistant, you should really at least put a 60-day out on there or 30 days. So you know that you're at least going to get another month out of pay, even if they don't need your services. And that's just how contracts work with contractors.
I think that's an amazing advice. And
then you still have that income coming in for 30 to 60 days.
And you can start selling those spots
Yep.
beforehand. Think really deep on how is this business going to scale, because that's really important. How are you going to scale your business? That's what I was saying. Like, you cannot scale your business if you're only one assistant. So,
and I think my other advice here, a virtual assistant is a really hard position because if I have an assistant, I want them here. And virtually to help me organize things would be amazing. But I just think with AI and so many other tools that this could be a really challenging business to keep. So my advice would be how can, like Fran said, how to utilize even AI and teach clients how they, do a training program on how they can utilize AI better, because the reality is AI is going to kill humanity, but like right now, if you don't take advantage of its services, it's going to crush a lot of businesses. So if you can figure out how to teach these clients how to schedule themselves with some of these platforms out there, that might be, a more invaluable kind of business opportunity, just 100. In my opinion. I hope that was helpful. So I'm sure y'all will have more questions after this. Please shoot us an email, info@fitish.com.
Well, I have one last question, just for our audience.
Yeah.
Books that you will recommend for someone that is starting a business?
So the cool thing about this question is like you could have maybe set me up for that at any point before putting me on the spot right now. Like you could have asked me last night in bed, hey, Jenna, maybe think of a couple books. I'm going to ask you what books you'd recommend, but you're just going to
Life is full of curveballs.
When the podcast is like over, that I'm supposed to just have business books to recommend. What are yours, Fran?
Well, I don't know. Like there's a couple, like Tim Ferriss.
Okay.
Tim Ferriss is really good.
Great.
Any book from Tim Ferriss. There is one for entrepreneurs, maybe $100 Startup.
Yeah, I haven't read any of those.
But you've read really good stuff.
Yeah, but I didn't tend to read a lot of books like that. I've read books more about scaling, and also I'll say I liked more founder story books. Like you and I remember listening to Shoe Dog. I love stories from founders. That's why I mentioned kind of the How I Built This podcast, because Shoe Dog is such a great book about the story of Nike. And I think so many people don't really recognize how many times that business, like it's almost a miracle that business is now what it is today. Because we all look at Nike as like, okay, like what a mega conglomerate of a business that is like totally like, controls the like sportswear and sneaker market. But oh my gosh, y'all, like they barely, for 15 years in there, like they literally were out of money every single month and couldn't pay employees, and like no one wanted Nike. And the story is just so cool and amazing. And I feel the same way about, I love The Ride of a Lifetime. Do you remember reading that book?
Like Bob Iger.
Yeah. So he is now CEO of Disney. Went away for a while. Now he's back. But his story, like he started at the bottom, right? Working really for, I guess he had originally started at like ESPN and kind of did the whole, which obviously is like or he was at ABC, which
he started a little bit of what ESPN is.
Yeah, so he started like the wild world of sports and all these things, but it's just the point is he started at the bottom and literally he's like running Disney, but he had great ideas, and he talked a lot about how he got there. And I just find stories like that really interesting, because it's more the moments of failure that I find that I learn more from with myself and with other people. Like I don't want to sit here and just listen to people talk about how they just like sold a business for a ton of money. Like I want to hear about how
you want to see what's under the iceberg.
Yeah, I want to hear the middle and how like they almost failed, or how their first business did fail and what they did from there. I just think that there's like a lot more information in failure than in success.
Well, amazing options, babe. Thanks.
Thank you for that question, Fran.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. Well, we are probably in Mexico as you're listening to this show, hopefully on a little much needed vacation with our now walking baby boy.
I cannot wait to see him in the beach, running in the sand.
But we will catch up with you next week. And if you have any questions about real estate for Francisco, I'm sure he's going to be very excited to do his business podcast here soon. So submit those, info@fitish.com. And we will see you here again next week. Bye.